For ruining my parents' housewarming after they claimed my house was theirs? My name is Brooke and I came into this world as an unplanned surprise. I was born when my parents were already over 40 and had a 10-year-old daughter, Courtney, whom they considered more than enough. Since I was little, I heard my mom repeat the same thing over and over with a flat tone like someone commenting on the weather. "We did not plan you," she would say. If it were not for your grandparents' insistence, she never finished the sentence, but she did not need to. The message was clear. I was there because my maternal grandparents had convinced their children to have another baby. They were thrilled with the idea of a second granddaughter. My parents not so much. Courtney was already fully immersed in her own world of teenage worries when I was born. She was not cruel to me, nor did she yell at me. She simply acted as if I did not exist. While I played with dolls in a corner of the living room, she would throw herself on the couch to talk on the phone about boys and colleges. She never looked at me. "Courtney, honey, do not forget your college prep materials," my mom would say, carefully arranging the books in her backpack. Meanwhile, I sat at the kitchen table waiting for someone to notice that I needed help with my homework. Nobody noticed. Help almost never came from my parents. They developed a routine that marked my entire childhood. Every morning on their way to work, they dropped me off at my grandparents' house in Glendale. "You wanted her," my dad would say to my grandfather, jingling his keys before leaving. "Now she is all yours." My grandparents' house became my true home. They picked me up from school, helped me with my homework, took me to the neighborhood park, and made sure I ate well, had clean clothes ready, and completed my school projects. Only late at night would my parents appear to pick me up. They arrived tired and a bit annoyed at having to drive across the valley again. "Brooke, my dear," my grandmother Evelyn would tell me, hugging me before I left every night, "you are the best thing that has ever happened to us." In those moments, wrapped in her embrace, I could almost forget that in another house, I simply was not wanted. That pattern repeated itself day after day, year after year. While Courtney prepared for her bright future, I learned to live as an afterthought within my own family. My grandparents' love, on the other hand, was constant. In their house, I learned what it meant for someone to truly value you. Someday, my grandfather Henry would tell me while helping me with math at the dining room table, "You will understand that many of the best things in life are not planned." He would wink at me. For a while, the weight of feeling unwanted would become a little lighter. When Courtney went to college, I thought maybe things would change at home. I imagined that with just me left, my parents would finally look at me. I thought they would see the daughter who still lived with them. I could not have been more wrong. "Brooke." I heard my mom's voice as soon as I got home from school, without even giving me time to drop my backpack. "The house needs cleaning. Start with the bathrooms." The chores that Courtney used to do were now mine. Plus, new ones arrived. The washing machine became my daily companion. I learned every button, every program, every trick so the clothes would come out decent. The housework seemed endless. "You live here, you have to contribute," my dad would say every time I hesitated for a second. "Your sister always did her part." When I turned 14, I went from cleaning to cooking. It was not a gradual change. One day my mom simply stopped making dinner. "You are big enough now," she announced one morning. "We expect the food to be ready when we get back from work." That night I made spaghetti with marinara sauce. The pasta was a little overcooked, but it was edible. My parents ate in silence. At the end my dad looked up. "Tomorrow try something with chicken," he said. It did not sound like a suggestion. My only escape was my dreams about college. Every night, after washing the dishes, I locked myself in my room. I would go onto the websites of different universities in Arizona and across the country. I imagined what it would be like to walk through other campuses, far from the cold silences and constant orders. I saw myself leaving that house. Then when I was 16, Courtney arrived one Sunday afternoon with news that changed everything. She came skipping through the door, dragging a tall, well-dressed man by the hand. "Mom, Dad, this is Scott. We are getting married." It seemed like someone had announced they won the lottery. My parents jumped up from the couch. My mom started crying tears of happiness. My dad was already taking out his cell phone to call the relatives. "We are going to pay for everything," my mom declared, hugging Courtney. "Our first daughter's wedding has to be perfect." For months, the preparations consumed the whole house. Every conversation was about flowers, venues, guests, photos, catering. The money seemed to appear out of nowhere. A designer dress from a boutique in Scottsdale, luxury decorations, a DJ, a professional photographer, everything top tier. My grandparents went to the wedding, of course, but I saw them uncomfortable amidst so much exaggeration. I found my grandmother frowning at the open bar and lavish setup that surely cost more than a full semester of tuition. My grandfather just shook his head when he saw the extravagant details, but they kept quiet. 2 years later, I was sitting at the dining room table with 3 acceptance letters in front of me. After years of handling all the housework and keeping perfect grades, I had been accepted into all my top choices. My heart was beating fast as I told my parents the news. "That is great," my mom said without looking up from her plate. "But we cannot pay for it. We spent all our savings on your sister's wedding." She continued as if it were the most normal thing. "We even took out a loan. There is nothing left for college." "But you paid for Courtney's college," I stammered. I felt my hands sweating. "That was different," my mom replied. "We saw potential in her." The silence became heavy. I was still holding the letters when those words dropped onto the table like a stone. They kept eating calmly, as if they had not just crushed my plans. "You should look for a job," my dad said between bites. "Save up a little, get a student loan. That is what responsible adults do." I got up without asking for permission, something I had never done. My hands were shaking when I grabbed my cell phone. I called my grandmother. Minutes later, I was walking through the door of her house in Glendale, with tears streaming down my face. "Oh, my little girl," my grandmother said, hugging me tight while I told her everything through sobs. My grandfather's face grew serious as he listened, but there was a strange gleam in his eyes, as if he had been waiting for that moment. When I finished, they looked at each other. It was the look I already knew, the one they used when they were going to make an important decision. "Brooke," my grandfather said, taking my hand, "we were expecting something like this." "What do you mean you were expecting it?" I asked. "We have seen how they have treated you all these years," my grandmother explained. "How they spent on Courtney's education and her wedding. We knew they could do the same thing to you." My grandfather got up and went to his desk. He returned with a thick folder. "We have been saving for your education since the day you were born," he said, opening the folder and showing several bank statements. "You can choose any of those 3 universities. We will take care of it." That night I went back to my parents' house and started packing. I did not take everything, just the essentials. They were watching television in the living room, and barely looked up when I announced that I was going to live with my grandparents. "Do what you think is best," my mom said without taking her eyes off the screen. I did not hear sadness in her voice, I heard relief. The following weeks were a whirlwind of college preparations. I decided to study finance. Somehow, seeing my parents mismanage money their whole lives awoke a desire in me to learn how to handle it well. My grandparents helped me with every detail, from filling out forms to buying supplies. When classes finally started that fall at Arizona State University, I felt like I was entering another world. The courses were hard, but I loved them. Every class was a step further away from my old life and a step closer to something better. My professors noticed my enthusiasm. Soon I was staying after class to ask questions about more complex topics. For the first time in my life, apart from my grandparents, someone saw potential in me. Real potential. In the middle of my sophomore year of college, my grandmother called me one afternoon with interesting news about Courtney. "Your sister is having problems," she said during one of our weekly calls. "Her marketing job is not taking off like she wanted, and Scott cannot manage to keep any job. They are always asking your parents for money." It did not surprise me when she told me my parents gave it to them. "Your mom emptied her retirement fund last month to help them with rent," my grandmother sighed. "They cannot tell her no." A year later things got worse. Courtney and Scott could no longer pay rent. Even with my parents' help, they moved back into my old room, the one I had kept spotless for years. The irony was not lost on me. Meanwhile, I was doing very well. My professors helped me get internships at several prestigious financial firms in Phoenix. There I discovered that I had a real talent for solving complicated number problems. Every difficult project confirmed that I had chosen the right path. You have a natural instinct for this, my boss at one of those international firms told me during an evaluation. We would love to have you back next summer. I just lowered my head and kept working. I had not thought about my family in a long time. I only remembered them when I talked to my grandparents. But in my senior year of college, when I went to visit them one weekend, I knew something was wrong as soon as I walked through the door. My grandmother's usual smile looked forced. My grandfather, who always dropped some comment to make me laugh, was quiet in his armchair. The house felt heavy. What is wrong? I asked during dinner, watching them push their food around their plates without much appetite. And do not tell me nothing is wrong. I know you guys. They looked at each other again with that look of complicity. This time, however, there was sadness. Finally, my grandfather spoke. Your parents came to see us last week, he said with a tired voice. They wanted us to give them an advance on their inheritance. What do you mean? I blurted out, dropping my fork on the table. They are having problems with the banks, my grandmother explained. They have several loans, credit card debt. They said they needed $200,000 to avoid foreclosure. And you gave it to them? I asked, feeling the anger rise. My grandfather nodded. We had to do it, Brooke. They are still our daughter and son-in-law despite everything. It was almost everything we had saved, my grandmother added. Almost everything. My blood boiled. After everything they had done, after how they kept feeding Courtney's irresponsibility, after how they treated me, little girl, my grandmother said, taking my hand. We know you are upset, but it is already done. We will be fine. I nodded, but inside I was still burning. My parents, who never had money for my studies, who used me as help around the house, had the nerve to ask for money from the only people who truly loved me, all because they did not know how to say no to Courtney. My efforts paid off after graduating. With my professor's recommendations and the internships on my resume, I got a position at one of the most important financial firms in Phoenix. The starting salary was more than I had ever imagined making. I rented a small one-bedroom apartment in a quiet district, nothing luxurious but safe and clean. Every morning I woke up grateful not to have to make breakfast for anyone. My career took off fast. I was given bigger and bigger projects. Promotions, bonuses, commissions followed. My teenage self never would have believed those numbers. In a few years, I already had enough savings for a down payment on my own place. The day I signed the mortgage papers, I could not help but think of my parents and Courtney, who never managed money well enough to buy a property. They knew nothing of my achievements. We had not spoken in years. Then came the call that changed everything. My grandfather had suffered a massive heart attack. When I got to the hospital, he was already gone. My grandmother, who had been by his side for over 50 years, seemed to fade inside. Less than 2 months later, she passed away too. While I was making the arrangements for my grandmother's wake at a funeral home in Glendale, I heard a familiar voice behind me. Brooke, do you want me to help you with the arrangements? I turned around and found my mom. She looked older, more tired. A part of me wanted to tell her to leave, but there was something in her eyes that made me hesitate. All right, I heard myself say. I could use some help. During the following days, as we organized the service and the burial, my parents started to open up. They admitted they were going through difficult times. Retirement has not treated us well, my dad admitted one afternoon, while we were picking out flowers. We barely make ends meet. And with Courtney's twins, my mom added. Twins, that was new to me. Yes, 2 4-year-old boys, she said with a gleam of pride. They are gorgeous, but they need so many things. Courtney and Scott cannot get organized, so we help them however we can. I nodded, keeping a neutral face. Some things never changed. A week after burying my grandmother, we gathered in the office of the family attorney for the reading of the will. My parents, Courtney, Scott, and I were there. The air smelled of old paper and furniture wax. You could almost touch the tension. The attorney, Mr. Carlson, adjusted his glasses and began reading in a monotonous voice. I expected the typical legal jargon, but what he said next made everyone sit up straight in their chairs. To our beloved granddaughter Brooke, he read, we leave our house located at 1234 Maple Avenue in Glendale, and the sum of $150,000. The silence that followed was brutal. Courtney's mouth dropped open. My mom squeezed my dad's arm so hard her knuckles turned white. Mr. Carlson cleared his throat and continued. And a personal note from Mr. Henry for his daughter Patricia. He looked at my mom. The note says, Patricia, remember that we gave you $200,000 when you needed it most. This is our final decision and we trust you will respect it just as we respected your needs. My mother's face went from red to pale. My dad stared at the floor. Courtney and Scott looked at each other uneasily. When the attorney finished and put his papers away, we got up to leave. In the parking lot, my parents approached me. The confidence they had shown at the funeral home was gone. Now they looked almost desperate. Brooke, daughter, my mom started, her voice trembling. You have to understand us. We always thought the house was going to be for us. We were counting on that. We are doing badly, my dad added, running his hand through his gray hair. The mortgage, Courtney's family expenses. We could really use the house. I looked at them, remembering all the years of disdain. All the times they told me there was no money for me. No, I said without hesitating. The house is mine. That is what my grandparents wanted. They kept insisting, walking behind me to my car. Courtney joined in, talking about how her children needed a yard to play in. I simply got in the car and left. A week later, my mom called to invite me to dinner. There was something different in her voice, lower, almost humble. Against my instinct, I accepted. Arriving back at the house where I had grown up was like stepping back in time. Except now everything looked older, more neglected. The paint was peeling, the gutters were crooked. The garden I used to take care of was dead in patches. Inside, the house was crowded but tidy. The twins, Tyler and Austin, ran in circles around the living room while Scott asked them without much conviction to calm down. The children were cute. They had Courtney's eyes and Scott's curly hair. Brooke, my mom smiled, giving me a somewhat awkward hug. We made your favorite dish, pot roast. That is not my favorite, I said without thinking. That is Courtney's. An awkward silence fell. My dad cleared his throat. Well, tell us what your favorite food is, he said. We would like to know. Surprisingly, they seemed genuinely interested. During dinner, they asked me about my job, my apartment, my hobbies. They listened when I talked about my work in finance, although I noticed they did not understand much. That dinner led to another, and then another. Soon I was going over to spend the holidays with them, bringing gifts for the twins, helping Courtney with the kids' homework. When they mentioned the house needed repairs, I found myself offering help almost without thinking. I paid for a new roof, fixed the heating, had the exterior painted. Every time I signed a check, my parents got emotional, almost to the point of tears. You are too good to us, my mom would say, hugging me. We do not deserve it. That is true, I thought, but I did not say it because despite everything, a part of me wanted to believe that people could change. The years passed. My career kept growing. Every promotion brought new opportunities and my investment portfolio grew larger. At the same time, my relationship with my parents seemed to strengthen. They were already over 70. I saw them getting friendlier. I started to feel like I wanted to do something big for them, something to show that I did not hold on to so much resentment. I have been thinking, I said at one of our Sunday dinners, watching my dad struggle to get up from the armchair. This house is no longer comfortable for you. It has too many stairs. They looked at me in silence. I want to buy you a new house, I continued. A single-story home with a small yard that is easy to maintain. Something comfortable for your retirement. Their reaction surprised me. They cried tears of joy. We spent the next few weeks looking for houses. Finally, we found a single-story house in a quiet neighborhood, with no stairs and wide doorways, perfect for elderly people. When we signed the papers and I paid the down payment, my parents would not stop talking about how happy they were. We have to throw a nice housewarming party, my dad declared. Let us organize everything. It is the least we can do. I would love that, I replied. I thought about handing them the deed as a surprise during the celebration. Just let me know the date. Weeks passed. I was busy with work, but I waited for a message with the invitation. When I asked, the answers were vague. We are still figuring it out, my mom would say. You know how this is. We want it to be perfect. We will let you know soon, my dad added. Something about those evasive answers bothered me. One night, after another call with no concrete date, I ended up opening Facebook. I typed Courtney's name in the search bar. I had not seen her profile in years. We were never connected on social media. There it was, a recent post. So happy for my parents' housewarming party this Saturday. The house is beautiful. I cannot wait to celebrate with the whole family. There were dozens of comments, relatives and friends confirming their attendance. In the photos you could see arrangements, tables, balloons, a catering service. It was not a last-minute plan. They had been organizing it for weeks. My hand was shaking as I dialed my mom's number. "Hi, Mom," I said, trying to sound calm. "I am calling to find out if you have set a date for the house party yet." "Oh, honey, not yet," she answered in a soft tone. "Probably in a couple of weeks. We want everyone to be able to come. Everyone except me." That Saturday, I parked my car half a block from the house I had bought. Music and laughter filled the night air. Through the large front window, I saw dozens of people. I recognized several relatives, my parents' friends, Courtney's acquaintances. The door was unlocked. Of course, everyone was welcome, except the owner of the property. I walked in slowly, following my dad's voice into the main living room. "And after so many years of hard work, we finally did it," he was saying, surrounded by people listening attentively. "We bought the house of our dreams." "Do not forget about Courtney," my mom added proudly. "She helped us so much with the down payment. She has always been an exemplary daughter." Someone made a comment about how lucky they were. "Unlike other people," my mom said with a loaded tone. "Our youngest daughter does not help us with anything. It seems her career is more important than family." I stood in the doorway. I felt my face get hot. Courtney was smiling next to her. Her 7-year-old sons were running among the guests in the house that I had paid for. "Actually," I said out loud, making everyone jump, "I think you are telling it backwards." The color drained from my parents' faces. The guests turned to look at me. Murmurs could be heard. "Brooke," my dad reacted first with a stiff smile. "What a surprise." "I imagine so," I replied, walking toward the center of the room. "Especially since you forgot to invite me to the housewarming party of the house I bought." The silence was absolute. Courtney's husband started looking at the floor with intense interest. "Well," my mom said with an edge to her voice, "what is done is done. You bought it, yes, but now it is ours. You cannot expect eternal gratitude." "Exactly," my dad added, recovering some confidence. "Frankly, you are not welcome here. This is a family gathering. Besides," my mom finished, "Courtney and her family will also be living here with us. We already sold the old house. Everything is settled." I could not help but let out a short, cold laugh. I pulled a folder out of my purse. "It seems there is a slight confusion," I said, opening it and showing the documents. "This house belongs to me. I never signed anything to sign it over to you. I was planning to hand over the property to you today right here, at what I thought was a party organized for me too." My mother's face turned gray. My dad started to stutter. I turned around and spoke loudly for everyone to hear. "Now I would like to ask everyone to leave," I said, putting the papers away again. "This is my house and the party is over." "You cannot do this," my mom yelled, raising her voice. "We are your parents." "No," I replied in a low but firm voice. "You were just the people who brought me into the world. My real parents were my grandparents. They taught me what family means, and they also taught me finance. That is why this house is mine and not yours." My parents left crying, followed by Courtney, Scott, the twins, and all the guests. I stood at the door watching the cars drive away one by one until the street was empty. A few weeks later, I learned that they had used the money from the sale of their old house, my childhood home, to buy a small apartment. Courtney, Scott, and the kids moved in with them. They tried to call me for weeks. I blocked their numbers, their emails, their social media accounts. I sold the house a month later. The money stayed in my account. Someday I will have my own children, and they will not have to earn my love or compete for attention. Unlike my parents, I am going to love my children equally and unconditionally, just like my grandparents loved me. Yeah. Comment. This story touched me deeply. I've been thinking a lot about what it really means to value yourself. Knowing your worth isn't about being arrogant. It's about respecting your own heart. I've learned that setting boundaries is an act of self-love, even when it's hard with family. True kindness includes protecting your peace. Healing from old wounds doesn't happen overnight, but it starts with choosing yourself. Taking full responsibility for your life can lead to incredible freedom. Sometimes walking away from what hurts you is the most loving thing you can do for yourself. I truly believe we all have the power to create healthier relationships and break painful cycles. What about you? How do you protect your peace while still staying kind? If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.